Come on up. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Really glad to have you here for this little impromptu talk. We have as you know, there's all kinds of great things that get scheduled all the time, but every once in a while we try to be opportunistic as well, and that was the case here where actually it started with, I just heard that Brett was friends with Bree. And then I was like, cool, when are you going to get him to come to Austin? And I knew he'd be working on that anyway. And then Brett Hurt, who's in Zach. And then eventually heard that he was going to be coming to town. So, of course, I started scheming and was like, okay, how do we get him to come to Capital Factory? How do we get him to come to our class at UT? And he was very generous with his time to do that. And Brett, too, for taking him around. So thanks for coming to join us. I think, how many of you feel like you know Bree's story already? Okay, I'll have to tell us. Some of you. How many of you know what MakerBot is? All right, good. That's a good start. So I'm going to give you the really short version. Hopefully I won't screw it up too bad. But Bree's got a really interesting background. He didn't start as a tech person or a CEO. I understand he studied more of the liberal arts and even mythology, right? Yep. Was one of the technically the titles of one of his degrees. And then was a school teacher, an art teacher for a number of years before becoming co-founder and CEO of MakerBot, which for me really was the first time 3D printing had a name, and it wasn't just this vague thing. It was actually like something real in a company, and I feel like I've really seemed to democratize it. Really, just opened it up to lots of people having access to 3D printing, and it's been so exciting to see that watch and to see 3D printers showing up places like here and other places around, and maker spaces showing up everywhere, which I feel like also kind of came with the MakerBot. So really excited to have him here today. So first, we'd love to, we're in Austin. We're all obsessed about Austin. So tell us about Austin. What do you know about Austin? What do you think? What do you hear about Austin?
So we launched MakerBot in Austin.
No way.
Yeah.
You did?
So
I didn't know that.
We got the checking account like January 17th, 2009, and then we literally ate 2 cases of ramen while working on our prototype, which is like this didn't exist back in 2009. Like this kind of space.
This place, yeah, something like that.
What a great amount. Like this is the way to do it. So we ate
Were
2
you
cases
living
of
in
ramen.
Austin?
Nope, we were in Brooklyn. We built it out of NYC Resistor, which I'd started to have a community workshop, and so we got the thing to work at like 8 a.m. I got in a taxi, got on a 10 a.m. flight, came here for South by Southwest Interactive, set up I couldn't afford a ticket, so at that moment, so I just set up in a bar, I think it was Moose Knuckle,
Nice.
which has like $1, I was, talk about like really affordable drinks, it was awesome. And
Well, that's the cool thing about a 3D printer. You can just kind of set it up anywhere and it'll
started
attract
printing
everybody,
shot
right?
glasses, and the great thing about bartenders, if they see a shot glass, they'll fill it. So and we had this sort of great experience, or totally frightening experience of we had started this and we thought it was going to be a side project, and then we got really obsessed with it, and we thought, okay, well, we'll launch this and we'll probably sell a couple of these a month, and then we sold our first 20 basically instantly. And we were like, fuck. So we spent the first 2 years.
And there was no Kickstarter then, right?
Yeah, Kickstarter was nascent at that point. It hadn't been used for products yet, and it was not very mature, and we didn't really know about it, and it seemed kind of really? What? It was still in that really stage, and bands were using it at that point. So we didn't. I also wish we had been smart enough to, rather than rather than take seed investment, we could have done a.
There was so much
Kickstarter.
demand. Yeah, you could.
We could and not giving up 4% equity for. We gave up 4% of equity for $75K when we started, but
It worked out.
But I'm really proud because we used that $75K and rolled the snowball downhill, and we didn't touch any other funding until we had done $8 million in revenue, which is kind of like badass.
That's pretty impressive. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So you launched it in Austin. How much have you been to Austin since then? That was a long time ago.
I've been to like 7 or 8 South by Southwest. Like
So primarily for South by.
I don't know. Maybe it must have been like 2010 or 2011. I think it was 2010. There was a Google party, and a bunch of friends and I started the Alta Vista party. Just dating myself here, and super successful party. Everybody thought it was actually sponsored by a defunct browser.
That's great. We might
They're
have
like, is this coming back?
we
And
might
we're
have to
like,
revive
yes.
the Alta Vista party, or maybe like the MySpace party. It'd be like something like that today. Awesome. So you're pretty familiar with Austin. Like, what do you hear about it when you're not here?
So one of my friends,
Besides the Capital Factory, is the best
Wendell,
place.
who is Evil Mad Scientist. So if you know me, you might know the Evil Mad Scientist crew. He went to school here, and little known fact, he held the record. He was in the laser lab, and he held the record for like longest time an atom has been held in, or a proton has been, or an electron has been held in one space, or an atom has been held in one space, and so like I know it's like super, like you've got a great you've got a number. It's like anybody will watch a video with like Mario Brothers and lasers. You've got this great infrastructure of like schools that have technical capabilities and just a lot of draw for talent and intelligence. You've got all these professors who are smart, and then you've got South by Southwest, which is probably for people who live here kind of painful, I would imagine, because like
Either you love it or you hate it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And but like when I came, it was back in the day where like South by Southwest Interactive was like 600, 800,000 people, and it was literally all the creative people on the internet. And then you'd all like hold each other's head over the toilet as you threw up, right?
So
Awesome.
what brings you here this time?
So I'm here.
Other than obviously Brett, but how did Brett get you
I
here?
came for the Conscious Capitalism Summit, which is pretty badass. That if you're a CEO, it's the first time I've actually paid for a conference in a long time. Normally I squeeze in or talk. And it's this idea that capitalism is one of the most powerful forces in the world of good, despite the fact that it can be used and has been portrayed as pretty negative, and people who have a bad job experiences generally blame capitalism. But it's this conference that basically says like, okay, you can have a business and do good as well. And that can just be like doing good by your employees and encouraging them to explore who they are and reach their full potential. Or it can mean good like actually like, one of Brett and I's friends is Cody, and he has a company called Zero Mass, and he's just launched it kind of quietly a couple of weeks ago. He's making solar panels that dehumidify water or air anywhere in the world and produce 5 liters of water per 2 square meters of solar panel.
Wow.
He's like gonna solve like water.
Wow. So what's the difference between conscious capitalism and social good or social impact? Is there one?
I think that there's a number of movements right now that have not coordinated yet. So, like, I love to be part of things when you can still go to something and you meet everybody. And this sort of like conscious capitalism, social good movement is still, it's still kind of,
Pretty niche.
it's still new, it's not everywhere yet.
Yeah.
And so like you can still go to something like this, and I got to see and Austin's probably normal, but I saw John, the guy who runs Whole Foods.
John Mackey.
And that whole crew, and Brene Brown has just blew my mind, and all these kind of things. So you've got me in this moment where I've just been like totally wonderfully brainwashed that like vulnerability is awesome, that being completely open is great, and I can't wait to go back. I've got a startup that I'm launching, and it's really not a startup, a business I'm starting next Tuesday, or launching next Tuesday, and I can't wait to go back and like get all like woo-woo with my employees and figuring out how I can support them, like growing as humans.
So that's a great segue then. So you guys heard it here. He's launching a new company on Tuesday. You've been a school teacher. You've built a company that was very, very successful, both financially and also having incredible impact all over the world. Sometimes, I know some other people that have been through similar experiences. It can be kind of daunting. Like, what do you do next? Like, so how did you figure out what to do next, and what are you doing next?
Yeah, I mean, it was totally.
Not like, I'm sure it's not the only thing you're doing, but
I'll just say, like, I think on the front end of startups, it's super exciting. But 2013 we grew from 100 people to 600 people, and we cycled through 300 people, and we really changed. It was really like 3 companies in that 1 year, and I'd literally hire somebody, and 2 months later they wouldn't be the right person for the new company.
because the company changed.
Yeah. And if I look back with that, and I cringe because I was like, I had to be the person that the company needed to be, and it was not always it wasn't always the person I liked. So coming out of that, selling the company, and then having to be at the acquiring company, which was a really opposite culture, definitely had me like, oh, I want to go hide under a rock,
I've only been through that twice, but yeah, I found it extremely difficult to be part of the new organization.
So now
it's painful.
I'm back in the arena, getting ready to go out there.
Back in the arena, there's a new VC firm here in Austin called Arena Growth Partners, and that's the phrase that it's named after for the entrepreneur that's in the arena.
Do you all know this Teddy Roosevelt quote?
I think that's what I don't know it, but that's what they quote,
Okay.
I think, yeah.
I have a hard time saying this without getting emotional, so suffer through this. But this is the thing. This is my guiding star these days. And
Somebody give a shout out to Arena Growth Partners with this quote, because they're going to love it.
it's from Teddy Roosevelt, Citizenship in a New Republic. So Teddy Roosevelt's this badass dude who was really one of the first presidents to be a superstar as a personality. He got in, and people were like, "Oh, you can't do that," and he's like, "Well, actually, it doesn't say I can't, so I'm doing it because it's right. It's my job to take care of the people."
And he did it from a wheelchair.
That's FDR.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Thank you. Sorry to mix that up.
I mean, it's funny. Yeah, there's so this just keeps coming up everywhere I go. So it's awesome. I first discovered it my Henry Crown Fellow crew, but it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions? Who spends himself in worthy cause? Who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat.
It's a pretty good one.
It's awesome. So literally, I'm with some friends, and that gets read, and I'm like, oh, fuck, I have to get back in the arena now.
Right.
It's who I am. I have these talents. I can't just hide under a rock.
I find for me, the way I think about it is there's, I like the very earliest stages of the company. And the way I kind of learned about myself, what I think about it is I'm excited until the sale gets repeatable.
Yeah.
Like while you're figuring out the sale, and every sale is like a new journey, and that's when I'm excited and it's interesting. And as soon as the sale starts to get repeatable, I get kind of bored. And then there's a whole other group of people who think it's boring until the sale gets repeatable. And then oh, now I have something I can work with. And they can go take that and scale that to the next level, right? And obviously some people you took it all the way, all the way through that process. But I've kind of learned I know where my cutoff point is.
So you're an explorer.
Yeah. All right, we have to talk about 3D printing.
Sure.
Of course. So, there's a popular saying that we overestimate what we can get done in the next year, and we underestimate what we can get done in the next 10 years. And we've heard that before. So I'm curious if you were to think back and apply that to when you were starting MakerBot, what What did you overestimate and what did you underestimate about where it could go?
I mean, the interesting thing about what we were doing is there's no reason it couldn't have happened 20 years ago. Except that there were a number of forces that had emerged which made it really fertile ground. So, Arduino had come out, and there was this whole thing happening where people were using microcontrollers to do absolutely stupid stuff and playful stuff that sort of unlocked creativity. You had Make Magazine, where I was working making videos, that was basically starting to document this emerging culture of people doing wonderful and sometimes absurd things. And then you had RepRap culture, which was this super wiggly, weird community where everybody was dumpster diving stepper motors and making super sketchy 3D printers that would take like 6 months to a year to put together and then work for like a minute. And we came out of this desire to want to create a tool that a 3D printer that people would use. And I should give he doesn't actually like me, but my co-founder Zach lives in Austin and he's a genius, and you have him here.
He's been by here a couple times, yeah.
So we emerged out of this sort of murkiness of this like fertile ground of like, okay, what we had just started NYC Resistor. We had a laser cutter, which was super awesome, and we thought we needed a 3D printer because it's like the holy grail for the maker to be able to just imagine something and then manifest it. And sounds kind of like I'm saying that as if it's exciting. It was exciting. Now it's one of the kind of weird things about riding a tech wave is, 10 years later, it's like normal.
Right.
Like
what's so big deal about that? You made a 3D printer? Like, people making 3D printers all over the place over here.
So that was the beginning.
That's great.
So the 10 years thing is, the interesting thing is we took advantage of, one of the things we did is we launched and everybody was like, you guys are so smart. You waited until the patents expired because they expired like a week before you launched. And then you launched. That's so smart. And we were like, what? Patents?
It's good timing.
Yeah. So
that goes a long way.
Yeah.
It goes a long way. So I obviously 3D printing, at least from my perspective, and I don't consider myself an expert or anything. I'm a observer, but has really come so far in the past. I don't know what time period, approximately say 10 years or whatever. And it's and it's much more available and everyone understands it and accessible. But it's still not, in my impression, it hasn't like affected the economy in the same in that like. Stuff, not as much stuff's being shipped anymore, or merchandising isn't happening the same way, or packaging isn't happening. Because I think those are some of the things that are coming that are going to be also really disruptive in different ways, like to the industry. So, how far away are we from that, where it's like, 3D printing is disrupting traditional industries and affecting their bottom line the way that maybe the music industry was affected, or other things, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's already happening.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, like. When you're starting a company and you're building a product, you want to have a market that will buy that product. And we started a company for a product that
you made a market.
We made a market, and then we made a product for a market, and then we had to figure out product market fit as we stumbled through it. And things really made sense when we came out with a machine that was assembled black and looked awesome on an engineer's desk.
It looks awesome.
And it turned out that the maker movement was pretty small, in the same way that the amount of people who have hit music songs is pretty small. People who are makers, even
it's a classic content
tens of thousands
contributor
of people,
consumer, right?
Tens of thousands of people. Whereas when we started targeting engineers, there's 7 million people in school to be an engineer in the U.S. That's a good target market. Well, it's okay, 7 million people. If we can get 1% of that, we're on our way. Great. Whereas when we got 1% of 40,000 makers, it wasn't as ubiquitous, and it's still, it's pretty fussy. For those of you who use a 3D printer, you've had to learn how it works to fix it, basically, probably. But the thing that made me happy, so I sold the company, and then I basically didn't, it wasn't a real public story, but I just started funding any teacher who wanted a 3D printer on Donors Choose.
Oh, wow.
And with a couple partners, we got to, I think we're at about, we ended up at about 10% of public schools in the US. Just to kind of like, frankly, fuck with teachers, or fuck with the educational institution, because we're in this time where if you are not somebody who enjoys reading and writing and memorizing, you suck at school. Like there was a time, like when I went to school, there was like metal shop and wood shop, and I totally loved these things, and I could have pride in doing that in school, despite the fact that I was completely distracted. I was into computers at that time, and I was the guy in the back of the classroom figuring out how the Apple II Plus worked. And that was my education rather than whatever was being said. So now we have this moment where if you're a young person who enjoys making things, our culture is not for you. But the neat thing about installing MakerBots in schools is that the kids who are effectively like DIY geeks or maker geeks, they gravitate towards it. They start making phone cases with the school's logo on them and start selling them and create underground economies. And so I would say, I think what'll be super interesting is seeing what happens when the kids who are growing up and are in elementary, middle, and high school, even college now, as they start to move into their adult lives, in the same way that like computing has been totally normal for kids
Right.
for a long time. What happens when like manifestation of physical objects through 3D printing is totally normal? I think we have a little time for that to evolve. And even at now, like I feel like most people know somebody who is that person who has a 3D printer, and if they needed to do something, they have access. So we went from like, what is that thing? Like I used to
At
literally
least
be
I
on
know
the
somebody
subway.
that has one.
I'd be on the subway and people would be going to a demo and people would be like, what's that? And I'd be like, it's a teleporter. And they'd be like, how's it work? I'd be like, it's a joke. Like, it's a 3D printer. And they're like, how's that work? I was like, oh my God. So
Anyone have kids that go to Magellan International School? No, not many. Actually, in this crowd, yours only. Capital Factory bought the MakerBots for one of the local schools that my sort of going to. I mentioned you. Sorry.
I just went. I'm building a ceramic 3D printer from scratch, and I went online, and on Amazon I was able to buy an Arduino Mega Clone, a Ramps board, which is an open source motor controller board, 5 Pololu stepper driver clones, an LED driver. A LED screen driver and an LED screen for $33. I'm like, holy crap! Like, this was
You
like
sold at the right time.
$250. Yeah, this was $250 on my BOM at cost when I was making 3D printers.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. My son, who I mentioned before to you earlier, he was 6 years old. He goes to a great school. He's a little frustrated, doesn't like his reading homework. And for the past like 2 weeks, he has been consistently coming to me and telling me that he wants to change schools and go to builder school. He doesn't know what builder school is, but he wants to go to builder school.
That's weird.
To the point where I'm about ready to actually like hire a carpenter to come instead of like doing soccer practice. I'm gonna have some carpenter like go like, because that's what he wants to go do.
That's awesome.
But it's pretty cool. Okay, so you mentioned you brought up co-founder issues.
Sure.
I'm not going to rehash co-founder issues, but hey, they're pretty common. I've had a couple
Totally
companies. I've had quite a few co-founders, especially in companies that actually work. Probably if they work or they don't work. But do you have any? If you were to give any advice to a lot of people here, are at that very early stage, they're looking for co-founders, they're meeting co-founders. You've been through this whole journey with them. Do you have any sage advice for meeting co-founders, finding co-founders, finding a spouse? It's not that different.
I think. So I think one of the benefits of being in Austin is that everybody knows everybody. I would assume, right? There's
least I know
there's a
everybody.
strong network, right? Like there's a strong network. So if you want to start something, it's probably relatively straightforward to start sifting through your connections.
It's
and
hard
network.
still. That's a very common
No?
question I get.
Okay, I'm making this
Yeah,
up.
no,
then.
they're like-
I
I
want
mean,
it to be easy.
Because it's still like I said, it's kind of like dating, right? It's like you got to find your perfect match, and that's hard.
I wish I had good advice. I don't think
No,
I
no, it's
do.
okay.
It's just hard. You're going to be connected to somebody who I mean, ideally, you want to be sort of ideologically aligned with the vision of the business so that you don't destroy the business in the process of a breakup. And I feel bad. I've done a few missteps. Like in Brooklyn, there's a really amazing ice cream company that just started up, and they just got VC funding, and it's a husband and wife. And I was like, "What's your breakup plan? What are you going to do when this gets really difficult and you have to break up? Who's going to be CEO?" Because they're co-CEOs. And I started asking some hard questions because totally projecting my own experience on them inappropriately. And they were like,
Let's go talk to a different investor.
This was just at a dinner. I wasn't, but
So it's a good question. But so that brings another topic. Some people may not know that you hired your dad
I did.
to work at MakerBot, right?
And
So what was that? That's kind of
I
like
respectfully fired my dad too, which is not the easiest thing. So I've also, one of the things I'm curious about actually is friendship, business, and utopia. Like, this is an interesting thing. So
You didn't even explain what your new company is yet.
I haven't yet.
That's your
I
segue.
I snuck
Okay,
past
yeah.
that. So I'm interested. So I spent the first half of my life dedicated to empowering people to be creative and express themselves and discover who they are by expressing themselves. Did that as a puppeteer, teacher, and with my videos in MakerBot. Now I'm really interested in friendship, and I've done everything wrong. I did everything wrong in the time of MakerBot. I hired friends without being explicit. I've had friends sue me. I've had I've had everything go wrong that could go wrong. I've also made some of my best. A whole group of my friends are people I made friends with during that time. So it's it's not even crystal clear, but there's a whole probably rabbit hole to go down around friendship, respect, and how that all works. It's probably connected to co-founders as well. But yeah.
So how does that play into your new business?
So when I sold my company, I thought, okay, I've just spent 6.5 years focused on one thing. I probably don't have any friends anymore. And I was a little sad, and so I made a list of all the people I know and respect. I'm like, okay, I know 200 people that I respect. And then I made a sub-list. I'm like, there's 100 of these 200 people that I respect and want to know better. And then I'm like, okay, there's like 12 people that I'd take a bullet for. So I was like, these friends have stuck, and after sort of reflecting on, I'm like, these friends have really stuck through me. So I started a project to make them a gold medal of friendship. So I started a project to design a watch that would have a gold coin in the back, kind of as an emergency bonus thing, as well as being gold. So I designed this watch, and my plan was to make like a dozen of them. It's really heavy.
There's the gold coin, which I think you can actually pry out of there. And take
Yeah, if you need to get on an evac helicopter over a border. Like, gratitude is this amazing drug. It's this awesome thing that, like, literally, if you feel gratitude for somebody, it lights up great chemicals in your brain and makes you feel really awesome. And it's altruistic, it's borderline religious, and it's the best feeling you can have. And so I've been in this state of gratitude for like the last 2 years since I started this project. And after a few months, it made me feel good enough that I'm like, I have to like support more people feeling this way. So I did a bunch of research. I asked everybody I knew what they had in their lives that were meaningful. It almost always came back to relationships, whether it's like your grandfather's hammer or your mother's engagement ring or almost everything. When I ask people what their most important, like valuable, meaningful object is, they almost always immediately start talking about a relationship. So, or telling a story about a relationship. So, the platform that I'm launching next week I have a workshop in the Brooklyn Navy Yard where we've got a bunch of machines. We're making lots of cool stuff like watches, pens, stuff that I wanted to make stuff that you could have on your person that would be like a talisman or like an amulet that you could have with you, and when you needed extra courage, you could like be reminded that somebody thinks you're awesome. And then when you buy something for somebody else, or you can buy stuff for yourself because we're Americans, and it turned out, like I did a test with gift giving, and we're not that good at it as a culture, or we don't have a lot of stories to tell ourselves about that, or we don't have routines around that. So I also made it so you could give yourself a gift to celebrate an achievement, which like lots of people do when they sell a company or do a big deal or have a successful year. They celebrate by supporting themselves. Men do this with watches. Women do this often with jewelry. So we make a bunch of jewelry as well now. And but the storytelling thing has been the most satisfying thing out of it. I built a platform where when you give something, you have to tell a story about the person and what they mean to you and what values they represent to you. And it basically makes everybody who so far has run the gauntlet of having to give a gift through the platform cries in the process. And everybody who's gotten one is, when they get it, they feel really special and it's very emotional. So more emotion in the world. Like this seems like a good use of my time. So that's where I'm at.
I'm gonna make sure to connect you. One of the startups we have here is called Weeva, and they make these social gratitude books. And we're basically,
Awesome.
they crowdsource everybody writing stories and sharing stories about a person or a topic or something like that, and then produce this beautiful book. And they both do it for obvious things like, family members or events, and then they also do it kind of like for celebrities and things like that too. But it sounds maybe like something that would fit in with what
Awesome.
you're doing. Cool. Hey, so you said you had some questions for me.
So so friendship. So like, what do you see happening? This is your home, right? This space. And you see X amount of companies come through here every year, get started until they can't, till they need more elbow room and move on. Is that basically right?
Yeah.
So what kind of things do you see, like, how do you see friendships grow? What are the trends around friendship? And then I'm just also curious, like, what would you be doing if you were, instead of optimizing for like economic outcome, optimizing for deepening friendships and relationships among ambitious people who are changing the world?
Wow, that's a great question. Because first of all, the way I think about what we do here, that is what we do.
Awesome.
Is that what this Capital Factory is all about? Connecting people together. Nobody's here for a desk, or a place to sit, or they could go work from a coffee shop for free. They could work from home. They could work somewhere else. They're here because of the people that are here. Sometimes it's because there's investors here. Because Brett's here today. Because you're walking through today. Because there's a bunch of angel investors doing a training class, across the room. Because the kind of people that are here are the kind of people that are looking to go start a company that might be their co-founder, right, or something like that. And when we talk about, even with our staff, about how do we make what do we measure? How do we make a difference? What's the metric? And it's connections, it's intros. Like, I'm asking, we're not doing a perfect job of this yet, but we're trying to measure like how many introductions are we making, because that's what makes this place go, right? The second thing is, I think for me, and like everybody's different, I'm a total workaholic geek and probably just have no life. Maybe that's an explanation of what this really is, but for me to, like, my best friends are people that I go do stuff with.
Yeah.
Like, we go solve problems together and build things, and like that's, to me, like, I love my wife and we have spent a lot of quality time together, but one thing I wish we could, like, when at the end of the day she wants to come maybe sit and watch a show together, and I want to go like start a project, like, what are we gonna go build something, do something, right? And so anyway, I've developed so many relationships that way, and I feel like I've seen that happen here, where people have met and they've gone and solved hard problems together and been through things together, and those seem like really tight bonds, which sometimes fall up, but often also become, really lifelong.
Yeah, I walked into the kitchen and there were two guys doing the wedding drink thing with beer. I was like, okay, there's some intimacy here.
Right.
There's an openness to intimacy here.
Totally. So yeah, I think it's a big part of it. And look, even you look at the mentors and the people that hang out here, we can rationalize it lots of different ways. When someone asks me about being a mentor, I look at them and I'm like, look, some people say they do it because they're looking for things to invest in. Some people, they say it because they want to give back. Some people say they do it because they want to learn from the other entrepreneurs. And like, I know why they do it. Everybody does it because it's fun, because they like it, because they like connecting with people, because it's this experience. They feel good about it. And all those other things are just kind of how they rationalize why they come in here. But I totally think it's the people and the connections that bring them all in.
So there's a feeling here just being here for a very short time that's different. So I've been to a couple different sort of incubator type places. And in most of those places it feels isolating, separated, and it doesn't necessarily feel like electrons are hitting each other. And this feels warmer. Like, what do you...
Oh, there's nothing you could have said to make me feel better.
What is the... Like...
I mean, I'll tell you, I do think it's actually pretty intentional. So first of all, this floor is all open. There's no offices. Nobody, I don't sit in an office. Actually, my office, I'm on the other floor, but I don't sit in an office either. Everybody's out in the open, which obviously encourages a lot more interaction and collaboration. The kitchen is like the place, right, where everybody, like everywhere, where everybody's mixing, getting together. I do most of my meetings in the kitchen. I don't go into a conference room. I'm in the mix because I might be sitting there talking to Brett, and then somebody else walks by who wants to say hi to him, and then there's some other interaction that happens. And
You're
then,
optimizing
you know,
for
when you walk
synchronicity.
through the kitchen, you feel that buzz of like these two people powwowing, talking about something really serious over there, and these two people powwowing over there, and like, and that's the part that I love about it. So, so I do. It is actually pretty intentional. The layout of this, the flow of it. Even on the 5th floor, our other floor, the perimeter is all private offices, but they're fairly large ones. And it was another really important part. When I've been to other spaces, a lot of times they focus on the outside windows, but they actually want you to feel like really private in your office. And we didn't do that. Actually, the offices all have big windows into the space, so that when you're in the middle of the space, you're looking out into everybody, and they feel like they're part of it, right? And that was a pretty intentional part of it too. So I'm really glad to hear you say that. But that is something that we really, because this place is about making people bounce together. Now, there's a whole bunch of articles. Even this resurges every year or two. Just like every few years, my background's email. Every few years, there's the email is dead meme that comes back up. Every few years, there's the open offices suck and everybody should be in a closed office. And I think actually there's certainly legitimacy to that for many reasons and many things. But at the stage of your company when you're trying to make a lot of connections and meet a lot of people and you're growing really fast, I think there are stages where, yeah, being in this open environment and connecting with having the electrons bounce off each other is really powerful.
Do you have anything intentional set up to encourage people of color and women to join? Is there anything intentional, or is that still on the? Is that on? I mean, it's super hard in tech.
Yeah. So it's something that we are extremely intentional about, and we do a lot of things with. And unfortunately, all of our partners who help support the things here, like Google and Dell and many others, are also very supportive of that. So they help to do that and give us resources for that. We do it through organizing kind of like events that are targeted to those groups to bring them in. We host lots of those events here. I mentioned we host about 1,000 events here every year, and so our staff all knows that if it's an event that targets bringing women to the space, bringing people of color in, bringing in veterans or other groups that just normally wouldn't be here, that's way up on the priority list. In fact, they kind of know that if it goes somewhere else, I'm going to be mad. Like I'm going to be like, hey, why isn't that thing happening here? So that's one thing that we do. We actually also sponsor diverse entrepreneurs in residence here, also through some of our partners where they effectively get a stipend or other things to help them get placed here. And then one of the things I learned from South by Southwest, not on being a member, but actually just on the events and programming that we do, another really important part of what we do here, I learned this from South by Southwest. When you submit a panel to South by Southwest and you want to propose it, one of the questions they ask about the panel, who are the speakers, and then they ask, tell us about the diversity of the speakers, and they give you some guidelines. And obviously they say we want to have very diverse groups. They don't say you have to have this or you have to have that. They just say, they just raise the awareness of it. And we copied that. We put that on our event form. So when you go to request to host an event here, it says, tell us about the diversity of the speakers. And I believe that has a huge impact, just asking the question. I don't have a hard data, but I think a ton of people go through that form, get to that question, and come up with a better answer. They get to it and they go, oh, I don't have a good answer to that question, and they go find one before they submit the form.
What kind of one of the really powerful things of Silicon Valley is that it's like multi-generations of super mega exits and ultra wealthy entrepreneurs who then want to give back, and this just keeps on kind of compounding in terms of the amount of wealth and equity in a system that supports more companies growing. How you've been at this? How long has Capital Factory been going?
7 years, 8 years.
Have you gotten to the point where you've started to see successful exits and then the sort of that contribution back to the community?
Within our ecosystem, if you limit it just to the companies that we started and funded, I think we're really just on the cusp of that. So our first investment was 7 years ago. That first investment was a company called Sparefoot.com that's here in Austin. They raised about $60 million in funding. They got about 100 employees. We actually sold about half our stock in one of their later funding rounds, paid off all the money we'd ever invested in any companies, and let the other half run. So it's a very successful investment for us. but the company's, it's still going, and they're still working on it. And what they, I think the average is 7 years for, a company to get to maturation. And that means the average is 7. It's a lot of times takes longer, right? And so that was the very first company we invested in. And they're just really becoming, where maybe they could go sell and have that kind of outcome and have that feedback.
Yeah.
So I think we're on the cusp of that. At the same time, one of the benefits Austin has, I think, compared maybe to a lot of other up and coming cities that are great startup communities, is we do have a lot of those serial successful entrepreneurs. I keep pointing to Brett just because he happens to be here and brought
I
you here
met
today.
Fred,
But Brett Schmidt,
yeah.
who you met, and Ronnie Kahan from Indeed, or Ross Burdorf, and Brian Sharples from HomeAway, and many others, and many other and then we were talking earlier about the ecosystem of companies that spawn out, the 24 companies that have come out of Our Voice or out of HomeAway or things like that. And so I wouldn't say it's coming directly out of the Capital Factory ecosystem yet, because we're just still a little bit early, but I very much see that happening all over Austin, and we benefit from it because then a bunch of those companies end up coming back in here, or they just sold their company and now they're mentors here, and we see a lot of that happening. So why don't we got about maybe 15 more minutes, 10-15 minutes. Would love, maybe we can open it up to the audience if you guys have any questions.
I got one. So, in the last 30, 35 years, we've seen that desktop revolution kind of touch everything. And in the last 5 years, we're really seeing it hit manufacturing. So,
Yeah.
We're seeing desktop lasers, 3D printers. Now we're seeing plastic injection molders that sit on a desktop. So it's fueling, along with Kickstarter, a lot of people to make things, and with a lot of promise, right? But it seems like we've got to that point where people can make a thing, and there can be generate a lot of interest in it. But taking it from that small thing to a mass market is where a lot of people trip up. And you've been through that process. What were sort of the challenges and struggles for that?
What were the challenges and struggles of bringing a product to market? It sucks. Like, it's really, I say that it's but also like one of the most satisfying things. So when I was with MakerBot, I built 500,000 square feet of manufacturing space in Industry City in Sunset Park in Brooklyn, and we did it there. And when you think about the United States, you don't really think about manufacturing anymore. And in fact, the talent we got, most of the talent we would get at the sort of designing a factory and running a factory were all people who were super happy to be with us, because to do manufacturing, they usually had to go manage factories in China. Now, MakerBot, I'm not part of it anymore. They've moved manufacturing to China with Jabra. But stepping back a little bit, we live in a weird world. Like, most products are made in an industrialized fashion at the hundreds of thousands of units. Everything is mostly commoditized. We've benefited from a lot of the stuff that we had in our tech was we benefited from the massive scale of billions of phones and the technology that's commoditized that and brought all that stuff into the approachable market. And then you have consumers who want to sit, as a culture, we mostly want to sit around and watch TV and be fed, consume. So, and I'm not saying, I don't even know if there was a golden age of manufacturing in the States, because I talk to people who, worked at automotive plants, and they just talk about the massive amounts of corruption and the major disappointment that happens when you have management versus hourly type of relationships. But the other thing that's kind of news this week is that Kickstarters are launching Kickstarters, and before they can deliver, they're getting knocked off and produced in China before they can even bring it to market. So,
wow.
So it's definitely a weird time, and also but so many times I'll buy something on Kickstarter, and then by the time it comes out, somebody's already seen the idea, leapfrogged it, and launched that product. So we live in this crazy time where product development you either have to build something that's resilient and will last a long time, or you're basically building something for a holiday season. So that's also not very healthy, right? Like what a weird problem set in terms of manufacturing. Okay, you have to have a winner, you have to hit it at scale, and you're gonna have to do it really quickly, and there's a ton of capital involved. As soon as it's not like you can spin up other servers on Amazon. You're like, bill of materials is bill of materials, and you usually have to buy it first and commit to everything beforehand. I mean, the other news we saw is 3D Robotics made too many of their drones, and then with PCH, and then cost them $700 a piece. They're now for sale for $400 in Best Buy, and that didn't. They bought too many, and then they got eclipsed by DJI. They had a competitor who made their product, who beat their product. So the competitive nature of manufacturing is really tricky, and our desire to have things super affordably and delivered for free, Amazon Prime, is like, there's all these sort of like, the deck starts to look rough. So the way I got to my company is by literally looking at this problem and thinking, okay, what can I leverage? I love to make things. What can I make what's worth making? So first I spent a bunch of time being like, okay, what's worth having? And I was like, what's worth making? And how can I justify making stuff that in this, industrialized, commoditized consumer world, where really the most reasonable thing you can do as a human in modern society is go minimalist and buy nothing, right? Like, this is actually, when I spent the years talking to people about what they had that was meaningful, more than half the people I talked to said, I'm actually trying not to have anything. I'm trying to give everything away. I'm trying to decrease the amount of crap I have in my life. And this isn't like a measurable thing, because we measure everything by how much people buy, not by how much they don't buy. So there's some undercurrent also that's like also kind of against making products, where people are sort of wanting to be anti-consumer. Anti-consumer is this underground sort of thing. So where I got to was, I was going to make things that were premium products, that would be uniquely designed, so they would look different from other things and feel special. And I would make limited quantities of them, because I actually want to build a company. I've got like 8 employees and 2 contractors right now. I'd like to get to like 25 and stop, because that's about the number you can get to where you can know everybody.
That's my favorite number too.
Yeah.
That's where Capital Factory is right now. It's awesome.
Awesome. So in terms of, and yet at the same time you look and you're like, you can buy a Raspberry Pi for $5. You can buy a computer for $5. You can have a robotic anything. You can put internet in anything. You kind of have to ask yourself if it makes sense, but it's so cheap it doesn't even matter if it makes sense. In fact, my favorite way, if I have any advice for people making things, it's make the most absurd, seemingly stupid thing that makes you really happy, and do that and see what happens. Because when you do, absurdity has this relationship to innovation, where when you make something completely absurd and stupid, you usually learn something that you wouldn't learn otherwise, because nobody else would be so stupid to make this thing, right? And then you can leverage off of that. That's all I got.
All right, I think we got time for one more. Russell.
What would you recommend for kids starting out to kind
good
of
question.
get into this, resources or things that they could do as they're, you mentioned middle school,
Sure.
high school. I've got 2 boys that are 10 and 12, and I was just at the hardware store, and he wants to make a scuba tank, and he's trying to glue things together and pressurize a bottle, and I'm worried something's going to explode. And I don't know. What do you recommend?
You're doing it. I mean, the thing about young people is they're going to look at what you do and be inspired by what you do. So the best thing you can do for your kids is indulge them, support their crazy ideas, definitely be there to pull them out of the drink if they're doing scuba equipment, for sure. Like, and I would say, like, indulge their passion. I mean, we live in a society where we're told to fit into boxes, and we know that those boxes aren't going to exist by the time we graduate, right? So, I mean, I'm going to resist going on an education rant because I can really get into it. But I wonder what would happen if we optimized our young people's experience for exploring who they are, exploring their passions, and trying to figure out what they like, which is actually non-trivial. Like, figuring out who you are and what you have an affinity for is an exploratory process that's a lot of
Sometimes
trial
takes
and
your whole
error.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still figuring it out. So, but if you can engage, if they can engage in that process of indulging their desires, then I think you're doing the right thing. You should take pictures and upload that crap to YouTube too. Other thing I want to mention, just because I have a little rant. So I have this thing. So I basically have been investing when I can't resist. I actually try not to make investments, and then I end up making like 6 or 7 investments a year for the last 3 years. And I keep on trying to find companies that will not take funding, because I want there to be more companies that are resilient, companies that don't have to go public, because it fucking sucks. And I swear very intentionally, it's really painful. Or have to sell the company, because the transformation of selling a company makes whatever you made, maybe it makes it, it's definitely going to make it different, whether it's going to flourish or not. I'm really happy that MakerBot still exists and that they're continuing. They're actually finishing up. They've got a couple things that I started that I can't wait till they come out. So I'm happy that that's going. But I look back at myself and I go, you know, I took funding because people came at me, and I thought this would be good in case we shoot ourselves in the foot. And we did shoot our feet full of holes, but we could have made it work, and it could have been a perpetual company. I could have built something that was like a GE or something like that. And in theory, I could have gone public and done that. But even though I had the greatest investors who were very supportive and just wanted what I wanted for the company, as soon as you take venture, you're committing right now to either selling your company or going public. And I love this idea of investing in companies and then getting dividends. And so I keep on trying to put this out. So I'm just saying this because it's a room full of entrepreneurs, and it's sort of my fantasy. And so
Those tend to be restaurant deals, but yes. My best cash-on-cash investment ever is the Grove Wine Bar, a wonderful restaurant here in town. If you guys have
Really?
been there, but yeah, oh my god.
You get a dividend check from them?
I invested $50,000 like 8 or 10 years ago, and I probably get 30, 40 grand a year out of it.
That's a great
Now
recurring
still.
revenue stream.
Yeah, I mean it's awesome. Like it was really really good. But I agree. I like cash flow business too. They got to find more of those. But
It's just something that I think most entrepreneurs don't think about. So I'm just trying to say it out loud
Yeah.
in rooms like this, because it's my and I'm totally owning that it's my fantasy.
no,
So-
I tell you, if you go look at the Capital Factory directors, look at the mentors that are doing the most of the companies, even people like Brett who have raised, I don't know if it's hundreds of millions, but certainly tens of millions of dollars from many of his companies. Brett, did you bootstrap your first business?
I bootstrapped my first 3.
First 3. I bootstrapped my first 2 businesses. Mikey Trafton bootstrapped his business. Melly bootstrapped her business. You go look through them, you're going to find tons of bootstrappers through all of it. And then, so very, very common. All right. If you didn't get enough, he's not going to be able to stay and answer lots of questions because we have to go from here to UT at 7 o'clock in Hogg Auditorium. Brett is going to interview him. I'm sure it's going to be a much better interview than my interview. So if you really like this, you're welcome to join for that as well. Again, that's 7 o'clock in Hogg Auditorium. I think Billy Pete's there around 6:30. Other than that, just really want to thank you for coming. We really appreciate you spending time with us.
I'm honored to be
coming
here.
back to Austin. So thank you very
Keep
much.
making the facts.
All right. Good job.
All right.
All right.
But I can go.
See you Saturday morning. Oh, where's the team?
So,
Yeah.
where we got?
I've been,
Where have you been, Sean?
focused on, it's great, and we.
Run away from us now?
No, dude, I'm in my cave.